Hello, hello.
Hey there, I'm Nick.
And I'm Abby, and welcome back to the Empowered by Empath podcast, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to be bold, to be confident, and to pursue the life that you are meant for. So for today's episode, we want to talk about taking jumps. Not baby jumps. We're talking about absolutely radical jumps, the kind of jumps that make you nauseously giddy, the kind of jumps that make your friends and family even question if you're sane anymore, the kind of jumps that make you feel like you may be insane as well. That's what we want to talk to you about today. So we're going to start off by telling you guys a little bit about the absolutely radical jumps that we've been taking throughout 2021.
Cool. So the biggest thing that we did in 2021 was actually start our nomadic journey, meaning we left everything behind and went international outside of the US and sold everything, ended our lease. If it didn't sell, we threw it in the trash and packed everything up in about 10 27-gallon storage bins and headed off to Mexico, out to Mexico City with a one-way ticket with just the two of us and our two cats and a few bags of luggage.
Yeah, okay, let's just talk about that because that's a lot. We literally sold everything in our house because we had a desire to travel. We just wanted to feel like we were free. We wanted to feel like we weren't tied down by things anymore. And so we just took that radical jump, and people were like, you have an entire apartment put together. You have a whole life set for yourself. What are you doing? Why would you just throw everything away? And we're like, this is what we want. We want to pursue a life where we're traveling, and we can't really do that if we have a lease. So how did you feel when we did that?
Just to put into perspective, the feeling that I went through is probably more or less not what could go wrong, but just everything that could go right, and then figuring everything else out that came with it. When I hear something like, how could you throw everything away? How could you have a whole apartment, you have a whole home, you have a whole life. It's this is my life, and this is decisions that I decided to make. Just going back to what you said earlier was that insanity of what are you doing? How could you make such a radical decision? And it just really came from not wanting to be tied down by physical items, that not only did we not have any ownership over, but we were just pretty much owned by, so we wanted that freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we want you guys to remember. In the first step of taking a huge jump, you have to really know why you're about to make that jump. So our motivational why was because we wanted a life of travel. We wanted freedom. So we knew that it was kind of an oxymoron to have freedom, but also be trapping ourselves. So we noticed that our why was being bogged down by the kind of lifestyle that we had for ourselves. So we had to figure out in our head why we were going to do what we were going to do. And then from that step, that's when you can kind of move forward and start mapping out what that's going to look like for you. And for us, that came with throwing away our stuff and ending our lease. So from there, we took the jump to actually book our tickets. And then we were booked our tickets and we were out in Mexico. Now we're there. We took this huge jump. Now, how are we going to maintain this lifestyle? How are we going to map out what those next steps were? So that's when we actually got into the process of launching an online course so that we have something to actually back us up so we can continue that lifestyle.
Yeah. If you don't have the finances to make something happen, it's gonna end at some point. In full transparency, that's not what happened, but did happen at the same time. We actually had a full-time income, and then throughout Mexico, coming back to the US, we actually lost that full-time income. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what really led the course to be pushed even harder now, because it's if you want to continue living that lifestyle, how are you going to continue implementing those steps that have to be put in place? Because one thing that you do isn't going to last forever. So same thing that you put in with everything else, how are you going to keep maintaining that? And really, when it comes down to it, building a business or building an enterprise, building something creatively that starts to produce that passive revenue will give you the availability, the options to be mobile in what's known as, Tim Ferriss's book, and you've referenced this before, is the new rich, the new rich, and that's being mobile within your life, being able to do the things that you want on a dime, pretty much.
Yeah. So mapping it out looked like to us, okay, so we want freedom. Now we have to map out our plans. So we have our housing, we've got our flights, we're out here in Mexico. Now we need to supplement our income. So that was our next step, starting the course. And when that happened, it was totally just an idea, and we started piecing it together in the background. We actually took another jump, which is just a side note that I remembered. We took another jump and actually invested into somebody to help us build that course. So even though we didn't even have all the income right away, we knew that we needed to get a start on this right now. So we hired a Kajabi designer to help us build out those landing pages and help us take that first step. So sometimes a huge part of taking a jump is being willing to invest in that lifestyle that you want to create for yourself. So you know why. You have a little bit of a plan. Now you have to take some extra little jumps around that so that you can actually make this plan come to fruition. And sometimes that comes with investing in yourself and investing in help, or investing in a coach, or investing in a course that's going to help you start building towards your goals. So that's definitely a huge step that we had to become comfortable with too, because it's all about taking jumps. When you start taking jumps, it's going to be, you take that first initial one, but then it's going to be building and building and building. So you take little jumps along the way to keep on moving yourself forward.
Yeah, and to really put a timeline behind that, just so there's some perspective, I guess, on what that really looks like, because sometimes we think things can happen way quicker than they can, living in a microwave society and want things now more than later. This idea was born, I would say, late January, somewhere around that time, where we decided to build the course out. And actually, what Abby was just describing, the Kajabi course designer just kind of fell into our lap. I guess we were through targeted ad or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was more or less like, let's get that rolling. Let's start that. And I would say probably from February to May, we actually were building the whole thing out, had a soft launch, quote unquote beta launch. And then that pretty much snowballed into building the rest of the back end of it. So we're now here in December. So it's almost been a full 12 months, about 10 months of building this course out. So just for a timeline and perspective for those who may be new to building something that is going to take time, expect to put about 1 year to 2 years into something to really get it off the ground to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you touched on the microwave society, because that really is how people think nowadays. I mean, we get information so quickly, and we get things like constantly flashing before our eyes when it comes to like social media, and we're always looking for the next thing to just look at. And with that kind of mentality, we kind of lose our patience. And when it comes to your big goals and your dreams, you're gonna need patience along the way to be able to keep moving yourself forward. So that's also a definite reminder that you always have to put in your head. Yes, you're taking jumps, and yes, you're making things happen, but be patient with yourself too. Because even though you may be hitting little goals along the way, your big goal may still seem far from you, but don't let that discourage you. Just look how much you've done to get towards that goal. So another thing that we wanted to mention is that once you start putting it out there and you start taking these jumps, and then you put together a plan of where you want to be, start telling people about it. Start making announcements, post it on things, let people know what you're doing, and let there be a little bit of extra accountability behind it. Because now it's not just about you. Other people are seeing what your journey is too. Other people are seeing that you're striving towards something. And not only is that encouragement to you to kind of stay accountable because people know about it now, but it also is extremely inspiring to other people who may be having doubts about taking a jump themselves. So share your journey, make announcements, be bold with what you're doing. And along the way, you're also going to be able to find some connections with people who are doing those same jumps too.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that through your impact that you make on yourself is a greater impact that you see made on others. We've heard something in the past called a rising tide raises all ships. But you have to be that rising tide in this scenario for the other ships to raise based off the jump you took. And that jump can just, like we said, look like anything that makes sense within your prerogatives, which, you know, is in line with your life. We don't know what that is. You do. This is just pretty much our story of what it looked like for us to do it.
Yes. And an awesome part of that journey is like when you start announcing things and you start seeing that other people are doing it with you, it's crazy the kind of friendships that you can create. It's crazy the kind of friendships that you can also lose along the way too. So that's something that needs to be addressed, because as we started taking these jumps, some of our friends got uncomfortable with what we were doing. There was that doubt that was casted. Like I was saying in the beginning of this episode, some people are going to start thinking that you're absolutely insane and that you don't know what you're doing anymore, and they don't align with that. But that is something that you have to become okay with. You have to be okay with losing some people who don't have the same vision as you. But in the end, as you start speaking that new vision out, you actually start attracting some people who have a similar mindset. And now we have, from our journey, bringing it back to there, we have a whole bunch of friends who are currently traveling the world, inviting us out. We've got some friends in Costa Rica and Guatemala. We've got El Salvador friends. We've got people in the UK, in Bali, and it's absolutely crazy because we put that idea out there that we want to be digital nomads, and now we're attracting digital nomad friends who want to go and do things with us and who believe in what we're doing and actually think of it as something common and not insane. And so that idea became just like a pipe dream to something that's right here in our reality and literally forming around us.
Yeah, even through the scenarios of the friends that stayed along with us throughout our path, to see where they're at is incredible now too. You know, whether they own a business or are starting on their entrepreneurial journey or building out their creative path that they want to pursue as a creator, you know, you start to see the evolution through your current circle that stays along for the journey, and they start to see you go through your transformations. They start to see the things that you drove through, and you know, like we mentioned before, you start to inspire each other. You know, it's not necessarily all about, you know, yourself when it comes down to pursuing something, because when you take a jump, you show other people that it's possible, even if it's not the same exact thing. I mean, we see extremely inspiring people do inspiring things all the time that make us want to do more, because it's like, if they can do it, then why can't I do it? You know, why can't we do it? Why can't you know, why does it matter? You know, with time will come a plan through execution, because what you set your eyes on will ultimately be something that you will instinctually start to mentally, you know, gravitate into your life and attract those things to you, whether that be people, whether that be resources, whether that be opportunities, whatever that package comes in, however many times it arrives, you know, you're going to know what's right for you and what's not right for you, obviously. And something that I guess that we'll probably touch on later, but I'll just mention it right now, is the details to that don't really matter. You know, and like I said, we'll unpack a little bit more, but the details of how things happen or how things come about, they don't matter as much as the goals that you're setting in front of yourself to be able to get from one milestone to the next milestone, and being able to see your progress that way.
Yes, that is a huge point. If we learned anything from this journey of taking jumps, it's that the little details really don't matter. They really don't, because as you start going along your path, new things and new situations are going to arise, and you're going to have to switch up your approach anyways. So if you had this well thought out plan that took this whole long time to put together because you were being a perfectionist and you wanted to have all the details before you got started. Okay, now you get started and things are completely unexpected from what you thought they would be. And so now you have to restart your plan. So that is totally backwards when it comes to taking a jump. When it comes to taking a jump, you just be radical and you just go in it and you do the biggest step first. So for us, that looked like just booking our flights. We booked our flights and we didn't even have a place to stay yet. We didn't even really know what to do yet. And And it was also a week away from the day that we were going to fly out. So we did the biggest step first and took that jump. And then we had to backtrack from there and kind of figure out what the steps are now. We were like, okay, so now let's find a place. Let's do this. Let's piece this together. Let's get this thing started. But if we would have tried to have all of that planned out before, maybe it would have taken us a little bit longer, or maybe that would have been a prolonged process where, since we were trying to figure out the details first, that took us a month, and we would have flown out like a month later instead of that next week. But that's something that hinders people. Take the jump first, figure out the details later, because the situation's gonna change as you go along the path.
Yeah. So that pretty much ties into living in the moment, I guess. Because obviously, you know, being stressed and nitpicking the decisions that you made to be able to move forward in your life of what you want, you know, things will arise that aren't foreseen, and they are there to teach you things. So the next time that you do it, you go about it maybe a little bit differently, and you're like, okay, well, next time we'll do this. So, you know, not being so tied down and bogged down by the stressors of the decisions that you make is going to give you the availability to have more fun with the life that you're building. We actually met somebody at one point, is once they stopped stressing so hard about what they were doing and had fun with it, it really started to all fall in line for them. They stopped putting the expectations on how it should be a certain way and let it be naturally, and learned from what it could be to what it is, and then took that result and put it into hindsight of their next go around. Because what you do is most likely going to repeat itself, not necessarily because it's not supposed to. It's just a part of the journey. Yeah, I don't know if you want to unpack that any further.
Well, I mean, just bringing it back to our story and our time in Mexico, there was so many times where we had something planned and it went completely different than what we were expected.
Yeah, like seeing the west coast of Mexico and only staying in the center and southern parts and the eastern border of the country, but completely missing the whole west coast.
Yeah, I mean, we had this full plan about how we were going to go down the coast and swoop in and go all these places, and all of that plans went kaputs because at the end, our budget was a little bit different than we expected. Airbnbs were booked up. We couldn't go to the place that we wanted to go, and we had to end up going someplace else. And all of those complications happened, and we had to be able to be okay with just living in the moment and saying, okay, this is just something spontaneous that's happening. Let's go try out Chiapas. And we went to Chiapas, Mexico, instead of a place called Puerto Vallarta, which is where we wanted to go next. And so we just had that spontaneous switch and change within a week. And we had to just figure out the next step and go with the flow. And if we would have been extremely upset over that, or been sad, or just wanted to go home because plans didn't go the way that we wanted to, we would have missed out on an extremely amazing place that we had no idea about. And that's going to be what your journey looks like too. You're going to realize things and run into situations that you had no idea were coming, and it's going to be even better than what you could have ever expected for yourself. So allow that spontaneous things to come in and live in the moment, and so that you can enjoy things more, and you can realize like how beautiful life really can be when things are just spontaneous, because you're going towards something that you want in life.
Yeah, the spontaneousness is actually quite tremendous when it comes to our journey. We were going to stay in Mexico longer, actually ended up producing a film that we were out there working on, and came back to the US actually early for that film, and ended up doing about a 6-week road trip throughout the western United States and central and south part of all of the US with our cats again, and spent about 2.5 weeks in Montana, and then the rest we spent living in the car on the road in a 2-door Camaro for about 4 weeks. And that actually was not fully planned to be like that.
No.
But it was just living in the moment and just enjoying the journey that it was along for the ride, because I mean, obviously it's a kind of an uncomfortable situation, but it's like, how else are we going to see the US the way we did? and have that experience in our life. So I mean, like, everything that's happening to you, at least take it for an experience. If it's like maybe later on, maybe a couple of years or a couple of months, I mean, you won't even be in a position to be able to have an experience like that, to be able to have, in my words, not as financially fortunate experience, but still, extremely wealthy experience within enriched experiences, memories, moments, being there with my wife and then our 2 cats. It was extremely cool being on the West Coast and, doing it in my dream car too, was just extremely fun. So everything that kind of didn't come with it, we got a whole package on the other side of it. Plans changed tremendously the entire time in those 4 weeks we're on the road. The things that we planned to see, we did not see. But we saw so much in between that it just left us open for, like I said before, our next go around, how to do it the next time we go back out there and what we'll do differently, and what to expect. So, just the things that you do, the jumps that you take, you'll learn from what it is to be, in that position, and then being able to elevate and grow so that the next time you're there, you can do it a little bit differently, but also just have your whereabouts and be put. And rolling into our next topic is, after that, everything will just start to fall into place. Not so stressed out about the things that are supposed to happen and what's not going right. You're more or less focused on the spontaneous moments that have happened and just the memories that will be laid into your brain because of you just allowing the natural course of time to take its place for where you're supposed to be, exactly when you're supposed to be there.
Yes, absolutely. And just tying all of this together, what we're trying to portray to you guys, and the message that we want you guys to remember, is that we want you to be bold in taking these radical jumps. We want you to allow yourself to be absolutely obsessed with your dreams, fanatical, go crazy about it, dream about it, think about it, live it, speak it to people. And even if it doesn't seem feasible at all in the moment, just know that if you just start taking these huge jumps towards it, everything will fall into place. The next steps will appear in front of you. People will come into your life that will be able to help and inspire you along that path. The things are going to start changing in front of you, and it's going to be a complete adventure. It's going to be nothing that you've expected, and it's going to be everything that you could have imagined at the same exact time. So just be fanatical, be bold, be passionate about yourself, and take that jump. We love you guys. Our path is to empower yours.